Welcome back to today's emission at Trent Radio 92.7 CFFF-FM, emanating from Nogajeewanong, Peterborough, Ontario, Canada, planet Earth, and also on the internet at trentradio.ca, wherever you may be on planet Earth or beyond. Speaking of planet Earth, there's a city called Toronto. And I'm delighted to be joined by Gary Topp, and impresario, um, a fan of music, a fan of film, and the subject of a very cool looking newish book. I would call it an art book. It's beautifully illustrated with graphics and photos over time. It's called He Hijacked My Brain, Gary Topp's Toronto. It comes from UXB Press. It has too many authors for me to name, and when you look at it, you'll see that it is very much a work of art, as is its subject, Monsieur Gary Topp. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
So, how does a nice Jewish boy from Toronto end up being a central figure in presenting both underground film and music in Toronto for, well, we can say 25 to 40 years, but certainly beginning big time in the early 1970s? How did that happen? How did you grow up into that?
Uh, let me start by just something interesting for all you Peterborough people. My grandparents, my maternal grandparents, moved from Europe and ended up in Peterborough, and they had a shoe store on whatever the main street is
George
in
or Water?
Peterborough. And if you're going in the direction towards Trent University, on the main street, there is a tattoo parlor on the right-hand side. That was my grandparents' shoe store in the early 1930s, in the early 1900s, rather.
Hmm. Well, there's the Metro connection.
There's the Jewish boy came out of the tattoo parlor. Um, you know, I went to a high school in Toronto that was very quite staid. The kids who went there all were following in their parents' footsteps, being lawyers, doctors, accountants. And I really was not interested in school. I didn't strive very high and failed a number of times, but my interest was in the arts. This is like in the early 1960s, very early 1960s, when everything was kind of really happening. In the art world, the pop art and the music. It was the folk music boom back then, and it was changing with the entry of Bob Dylan in 1961, and that's all that interested me. And I think school put me off so much that I really strove to know about what was happening, uh, especially in New York. And maybe I was planning my future career back in high school because I knew what I wanted to do. When I was in high school, uh, to get into grade 13, the principal they sent around a questionnaire. What do you want to do when you get out of grade 13? And I said I did not know. And they sent me to what was called the Jewish Vocational Center, and I was did a lot of uh, did a lot of interviews and tests to find out what I wanted to do when I got out of high school. And after a week of all this, the result was that I wanted to be a DJ. So it was probably the most accurate educational thing that ever happened to me. I just kind of followed my instincts and didn't want to go to University of Toronto and ended up in Centennial College, which was basically, I think, the first community college in Ontario. And followed my dreams there, took journalism and public relations, and you know, continued. Sorry.
What There's an interesting quotes in the book about your positive experience at Centennial, and then quickly you start promoting various things. Let's Very few of our listeners are in the Toronto area immediately. I was, and you and I were approximately the same age. So some of the places that you were associated with, some of the cinemas. Let's talk about that underground music, the underground film scene, and the Roxy, and a couple of the other theaters. What did that mean to young people in the late 60s by that point, in early 70s, who were discovering a very amazing film scene that wasn't necessarily mainstream?
I had two jobs. I got fired from one for criticizing my boss in public, and then worked for a, you know, I would say an underground film distribution and exhibition company. They distributed some great movies like, the Godard and the Monterey Pops and the underground films, Kenneth Anger and all that. And they had a movie theater, and I learned sort of about booking movies by booking midnight movies at this theater. When the company went bankrupt, I I decided to start my own company, and nobody would show the films I distributed. One in particular was a movie called Hendrix at Berkeley, Jimi Hendrix. It was very short, like an hour, less than an hour long, and none of the theaters would show it. So I opened up my own theater, and I decided to I ran the Hendrix movie for about 6 weeks, did very well, and then I decided to continue. But I only wanted to show what I liked and what I was interested in. And I had no idea what would happen. But word, gradually got out about the theater. It was on the subway line. I showed two different movies every night. And, it garnered a following. Young kids, all different ages, but a lot of young kids. And I would say that it was kind of an underground thing that became popular. But the kids that were there were very like-minded, and to me. And at that point, the music scene was kind of changing with, Iggy Pop and, well, Roxy music, and by the mid '70s, the Ramones and stuff, and these kids were into this scene, and they started to form bands. And when we closed the Roxy Theater, which was called the original 99 Cent Roxy, we moved to a theater on Yonge Street called the New Yorker, and continued the policy there. And one night, watching a movie called Blank Generation, which was an underground film by a New York filmmaker, Amos Poe, and it was all about, it was home movies based on um, all the new bands that were coming out of New York at the time and playing, Max's Kansas City and CBGBs, and so you've got the Ramones and Talking Heads and Robert Gordon and the Heartbreakers and all this. And I was watching it one night and decided, gee, I've been running two different movies every night and trying to make it special for about 6 years. I'm going to build a stage and bring these bands to Toronto, bands that nobody had really ever heard of. And and it I did that, and the Ramones was basically the first band that played there,
Yeah.
which people credit to sort of starting the punk scene in New York, in Toronto.
And that led to an amazing career for you and the gentleman you often worked with, Gary Cormier. You were known as the Garys. Um, what were some of the highlights? I mean, bands from obviously not Toronto, you created an association with and helped build an audience for, like Police, but there were also bands in Toronto like Martha and the Muffins and others that you would promote. So how would you sum up that kind of indie, new wave punk movement that you were involved in as a promoter in Toronto and at some of the venues you used? Like the Horseshoe, very well known probably across the country, but the Edge, and of course the New Yorker itself. And then you did these fabulous police picnic outdoor things. So you move into promoting. How would you describe the sort of main intent of what you're doing for the next 5 to 10 years?
The intent was to promote, make people aware of music that we liked. We weren't part of the industry. We booked music that artists that we were interested in, hoping that people would come and see them. And like taking the New Yorker, which was, more or less where, I got my start at promoting music. Uh, the first show we did was the Ramones. The second show we did was a North Indian Sarod player, somewhat like Ravi Shankar, and the third was Wayne County, who became Jane County, one of the first transgender artists of the century. And people had trust in my taste from the movie theaters. And, I kind of counted on that trust translating into the music that Gary and I did. And we promoted the local scene the same as we would promote an imported artist. Now, none of the artists that we were working with were anything at the time. I mean, when we were asked to book the Police, we'd never even heard of them. Um, but there was somebody in the band, Andy Summers, the guitar player, who I knew about and wanted to get a hold of a musician that he had played guitar with from England. And we booked the Police in order to get this guy, Kevin Coyne, Coyne, who actually ended the last venue that we actually ran as a day-to-day venture, which was the Edge. And the Edge was the first schoolhouse of Egerton Ryerson, who who founded Ryerson College in Toronto.
What, looking back at this career in promoting music, in promoting film, and creating audience and community where, in commercial terms, there wasn't supposed to be one, but among other things, you are a successful cultural entrepreneur and impresario. What would you say to young artists or people who are trying to present culture and thinking of it as a career?
Uh, Number one, don't do it, especially these days. These days, it's very difficult to do what we did back, a half a century ago. The industry has changed so much, and there's a few promoters uh, who work with the few agents who basically control the industry. Um, Promoting is like gambling. You don't know whether you're going to win or lose. So you better enjoy what you're doing and want to promote who you're promoting, because there's a good chance you could lose thousands of dollars in one night. You can make it too, but um, it's not an easy business. It's a very cutthroat business now. We came into it in a time when nobody knew what we were doing. So we had total control of what we were doing and who we were bringing in, and no competition. Once they got famous, some stayed with us, like the Police. Um, these days, none. There was a band called Per Ubu. The singer just died about a week ago, David Thomas. And we had done every show that Perubu had done in Toronto back in the 70s, and during this new music scene. And back in the early 2000s, Perubu went on tour again, and I called this new agent and let him know that I was interested in doing Perubu and how much I had worked with them in the past. I mean, I was basically David Thomas's babysitter in the latter days when he left the band and was doing things on his own. He'd call me like I'm basically crying. I can't. And this new agent didn't even return the calls.
Mm,
So there's no loyalty whatsoever. The police were very loyal to us. Always, the only times they didn't work with us were the last two tours when, the tours were Live Nation paid them billions of dollars to go on tour. The Dixie Chicks I promoted in the late 90s when nobody knew who they were. And I put them into Massey Hall because I just felt that they were going to be huge by the time I brought them here. And there was one of the first shows that they did, headlining shows they did in a theater.
mm,
And the next time around, they were big, and American promoter gives them millions of dollars for the tour, but they cut me into the profit of that show. I wasn't even in Canada when the show happened, and I get a check for like $10,000. So that there is loyalty there. There's loyalty with, I've made a lot of friends in the business, artists who are still going today that are very, that were friends. I wouldn't call it loyalty, I'd call it friendships. But I don't, I taught a course at a school in Toronto, Harris Institute, which is a music-based school, and I taught promoting, and most of the kids were just you know thought they knew everything, and I didn't last very long. I gave them a test, a final exam, a take-home exam, and everybody failed. Everybody had this exact same wrong answers, which meant that they just had copied each other. One person, who has since passed away, she, got like 99%. I was going to give her 100. I said, no, I'll take off the 1 point. But, it's a different, I think you have to really, you can go into it wanting to be in the middle of the industry, meet, or get free tickets, meet artists, whatever, or you can do it our way and just book what you want and enjoy it, and either see the bands for free or pay lots of money to see them.
huh. Well, it's an amazing contribution you made to Toronto, and I saw some of the acts and went to the venues and went to both the New Yorker and Roxy Theater when I was growing up in Toronto. So the book, He Hijacked My Brain, Gary Topp's Toronto, is a wonderful oral history of an important moment in what is Canada's biggest city. And Gary Topp, you made you and your colleagues made quite a contribution. So thank you. Good luck with the book, and
Thank you.
good luck with everything else you're doing. Thanks for
Yeah,
joining me.
I might add the book won third prize in a Canadian book design competition. a couple of weeks ago, and it's going to
Good.
tour the world.
Well, it looks very cool, and people can contact UXB Press. They'll find it easily online if they want a copy. And if anyone, the good people at Take Cover Books in Hunter Street East are listening, it would be the kind of book that if they don't have, they should. I'll mention on your behalf, Gary. When I speak to the good people that Take Cover, I'll say, "Hey, do you have He Hijacked My Brain?" I'll let you know the answer to that if you don't.
All right. We've 1,300 were printed, and there's about 70 left.
Wow,
There's about five boxes on the skid,
cool.
plus in the stores. So yeah, it's been very popular. And the nice thing about it is that everybody loves it and resonates with it. It's not a memoir. It's a book about the community that I think changed Toronto and the similar communities, punk rock, whatever you want to call it, do it yourself, changed the world. And it's still, you can see it today, which no other music scene had that effect on culture, I don't think.
All right, sir. Well, thank you and take care. Thanks for joining me, Gary Topp.
Thank you for doing this. Nice to meet you. You got great hair.
Works on radio, eh? All right, ciao.